creating habits and breaking habits. So how do we stop habits that we don't like? How do we form new ones? And hopefully you'll get some great value from this. I'm going to be sharing what I think are the most valuable tools, the most beneficial things we can do for creating habits, for breaking bad habits. So if you have any questions, I'd love to interact with you. Either send me a message if you're watching this live, if you're watching the recording of this and you have any follow-up questions, or you have a specific habit that you'd either like to stop or that you want to create. So wait a couple minutes here, see who's joining in. And I'm also testing out a YouTube live at the same time here. So multiple ways to interact with us here. If you're not aware that we have a YouTube channel, it's just search Inevitable You. It should pop up right there. Please subscribe. Please like this video. If you're getting any value, please share it with your friends, family. Again, you can get the recording on this on the channel, on our YouTube channel, here on the Instagram page. So let me see if we have any questions so far. Okay, so where I want to start with this is defining really what is a habit. We want to understand why we do the things that we do. What are habits in the perspective of, neural patterns, how our brains work. So basically everything we do is a habit, right? You look at the course of your day, the course of your life. I mean, we do things over and over again. We run the same patterns over and over again because, it's things that we get used to, and they create value for us. Even bad habits, bad patterns, we get some benefit out of it. That's why we continue to do it. And you might be thinking, well, what about that bad habit that I do? What if it's, smoking or, biting my nails or, things that we typically would consider not great for us. Well, in reality, they are serving us in some way. One of the examples that, a common example, common pattern or habit that, I see a lot of is procrastination. And so if you think about this as in terms of a strategy, habits are just strategies that we use. We get some benefit out of the strategy. So with procrastination, we're delaying something, we're avoiding something we don't want to do, we're avoiding pain, maybe it's avoiding failure. And so it's a strategy, right? It's serving us in that regard. We're avoiding some kind of pain, and it may be creating some pleasure in the moment, right? If we're procrastinating something we don't want to do, well, we're probably filling it with something that we do enjoy doing, at that time. And so to think about this differently, to even think about your bad habits differently as just strategies that you use. And now, why do we use them? Why do we continue to do it? Even though, we're always thinking about, man, I want to stop this. I don't know how, I don't know. I just can't. Well, again, it's been ingrained, maybe over a long period of time. And another way to think of it is it's just a groove in a record, like one of those old, records that you play over and over again. It starts to form a groove because, that's that needle running over the pattern or over the record, over a long period of time, start to create that groove. And so it's just neural patterns that have been wired together over time. And that's why it can feel like, it's so hard to break something because it's wired into our brains and it's almost unconscious. We do it without even thinking about it. What's up, Amanda? Glad you're here. Yeah, feel free to type anything in, any questions if you have specific habits that you're wanting to create or break. Happy to make this more specific. Just going a little bit into more general perspective on what habits are, why they are, and how we can go about, thinking about them differently. And then what do we do with them? So, and if you want to join live with me, be happy to do that. We can have a conversation. So again, we're looking at, habits as really just strategies, right? And I just gave the example of procrastination as a strategy to avoid pain or avoid failure. It keeps you safe. It keeps you in your comfort zone. So that's the benefit of it. That's what the strategy's for. Or you can think about addictions, habits like, alcoholism or drug use. Again, there's benefits to that strategy. And this, is somewhat controversial. A lot of people believe that addictions are a mental illness. There's something wrong with them, but addictions can be some of the most powerful neural patterns, that you can have. It's just oftentimes addiction gets a bad connotation. When it's a bad addiction, it has a negative connotation. So, but things like alcoholism, drug use, they're again creating some value. There's a benefit. It's either, we feel good in the moment, right? We get to escape. Maybe it's a strategy to not think about things, to escape, to just blow off some steam. So again, it's there for a reason. We continue to do the habits for a reason. So one of the first things we want to do is know what that is, why you're doing the strategy in the first place. Because if you want to stop doing something, you have to replace it with something else. You can't just, stop. You have to fill the void. And one of the best things you can do is, in knowing the benefits that habit, that strategy has, well, now how can I get the same benefits and more just using a different strategy? So, with procrastination, for instance, if it's, I want to avoid pain or, avoid failure. Well, the irony of it is really it ends up becoming more painful, right? If you're procrastinating too long and now you're stressed out because you have to get something done or you didn't do something and now it really becomes a failure. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I would say if procrastination is one of your habits, and so I joke with clients, I'm like, they tell me, oh, I just have this hard time with procrastinating. I can't stop. I'm like, oh, you're an epic procrastinator, right? You're the best. You're the best procrastinator. Like, yeah, totally. And I'm like, great. Well, if they're focused on health, then procrastinate on reaching for a donut, right? Procrastinate on eating that junk food. If you procrastinate, use that same strategy, but procrastinate on the things that aren't resourceful for you. Well, now all you have left is, carrots to reach for or a salad to eat, right? So that's kind of one simple, practical way of looking at it. Like, you're not stopping procrastination, using the same strategy, but in a different way. And then procrastination, if you think about it, really is like the same neural pattern, same strategy as delayed gratification. And so they did this great study years back. There's a funny video on YouTube floating around where they had young kids come in and, they're like 4 or 5 years old. And the person running the test would present them with 2 cookies or, well, 1 cookie first. And they would say, okay, I'm going to leave the room for 5 minutes. And if I come back and you haven't eaten that cookie, I'm going to give you a second cookie. And so they keep the camera on the kids. The person leaves the room and they're, it's hilarious. They're like, some of them just go ahead and eat it right away. Right. But some of them are like, they're hovering over it. They're like licking it. They're like, maybe take a little crumb off of it. And so this was a long-term study that they did. And when they went back and looked at the kids who didn't eat the first cookie and waited for the second one, that was one of the main indicators of success. Those kids ended up being the more successful of the group, and because they were able to practice delayed gratification. But what they also found, which was unintended, was they were also huge procrastinators. So it's the same neural strategy, but if you can apply it in a different way and you can procrastinate on, maybe that gratification, and you do the more painful things right away, you get those tasks done, you take the action on the things you don't want to do, and then what you have left after, you've just delayed the gratification of, now you get to relax, now you get to go enjoy yourself, now you get to do the things that you really want to do. So again, we're thinking about ways to get the same benefits, and more, just using a different strategy. With things like addiction, again, where can you place your addiction? Like, if, for instance, you're addicted to, drugs or alcohol or any other, substance, and it's giving you some satisfaction, some physical feeling. Well, what if that addiction was used on other things? What do we call people who are addicted to exercise, for example? Really healthy, right? Like, and they have the same benefits. They feel great after it. It's a stress reliever for them. It serves the same kind of purpose, just using something different. So what would it look like if you got addicted to the more resourceful things, got addicted to meditation, addicted to, something that you love doing, be it a side project, a hobby, a second business, things that bring you joy in the moment. If you place that addictive pattern, that addictive habit on things that are great for you, then it becomes a really resourceful strategy. So just to recap this first part, looking at the benefits of the current habits or strategies, I'm using those synonymously, why we do it, what am I getting out of it, and how can I use the same strategy with different things. So let me know if that's making sense. And Amanda, you're my only one here right now, but I'd be happy to invite you in if you wanna chat or type something in. Let me know if that's making sense. Let me know if you have any questions around that. Okay, so and by the way, if you haven't joined a live video, you can. There should be a button there that you can add yourself. I'll even send you an invite if you want to accept and join in. So continuing with more just like content tools, things that we can do for stopping the habit. Now, once we're clear on that, why we're doing it, how can we use these strategies different? Now it's just a matter of really repetition and intensity. So the only two ways that we really change is through repetition and intensity. Repetition, you're doing it over and over again, just like I referenced, creating that new groove in the record or forming these new neural bundles, these new neural connections, so that over time, it just gets wired in. And there's a great study that was done by NASA back when they were, doing missions to the moon, and they were looking at, potentially missions to Mars. And they were doing studies on astronauts, and what they found was, so they gave them goggles that would literally flip their world upside down. And so if you think about the way that our eyes work, is it's refracting what we're seeing essentially upside down on our visual cortex, but our brains create it right side up. But the actual image is inverted. And so the goggles just reinvert that. So we're seeing things upside down. So literally they're like trying to eat their, cereal like upside down. And it's very disorienting. And what they found was a couple of things. On average, about 21 days in using these goggles, eventually their brain would figure out a way to flip it right side up again. And so they'd wake up and suddenly they'd still have the goggles on, but they'd see everything normally again. What they also found was at any point during that 21-day period, and that's an average, some were more, some were less, but on average, in that 21-day period, if they took the goggles off, it would reset the clock. So they'd have to go another 21 days. And so that was some of the earliest science on how our brains work and how we create habits, how our brains adapt. So, if you can repeat something for 21 days, and really that's not a lot if you really think about it, if you can just do something for 21 days, and have that in your mind, and the closer you get, you're getting more motivated, you're getting more inspired. But yeah, generally 21 days is all it really takes to break or create habits. Then within that process, it's really so intensity. Again, repetition's one, intensity is the other. If you can use consciously emotion to wire these things in, so neural patterns, our thoughts are wired in by the emotion. So it's like the lighter fuel, right? The lighter fluid on the spark. The emotion wires things into our nervous system. So the more intensely that you can do something, oh yeah, no problem, Amanda. The more intensely you can do something, the more effectively you can and quicker you can wire something in. So let me give you an example. This is well documented. Women who smoked, most of their lives, and then all of a sudden they get that positive pregnancy test. Boom! In that moment, all of a sudden they're done smoking. It's like over 90%. Something, and they could have been struggling trying to quit for years. But in that moment, it's very intense. It's meaningful for them. It's now, they have another human life to look after, and they want to ensure the safety and health of their child. And so it's a very intense moment. This can also work in the opposite, where, all of a sudden, if you have struggled with health and then you go to the doctor and, you get a bad checkup, or the doctor says, hey, you've got, cancer, you've got diabetes, generally that's like a wake-up call, right? Like, it's a very intense moment, and you'll make some changes. Now, what's interesting about that is, shockingly, a lot of people faced with essentially death, if they're told, hey, if you don't make this change, a significant, radical change in one of three areas of your life, be it diet, exercise, stress relief, you'll die if you don't do this, within 5 years. Over 80% of people won't make the change. They'll continue the habits. So that's, again, how powerful these habits and neural patterns can be. And this comes from a study done by Dr. Dean Ornish. There's an article we love to reference here called Change or Die. And he became popular because of this study, where he took coronary bypass patients, and on average, again, over 80% of people wouldn't make a significant change to their health or their stress. And they were told, you're going to have another heart attack, and you might die in the next 5 years if you don't do this. Well, he did something different. He took these people and he said, okay, we're going to make you sign a contract that says you're going to follow this program. We're going to set up a diet. You're going to meet with a nutritionist. We're going to give you a workout plan. And you're going to, do some practices like meditation, stress relief. You're going to talk with a psychologist, and you're going to sign this contract. You're going to do this, for the next year. And so in doing that, there is accountability that was put in place, right? Like, now you're making a commitment, you're signing a piece of paper So psychologically, that has a big effect, but also it was the support system, putting the support system in place and having those people hold them accountable. And then he said, you're going to make one radical, well, I think it was 2 out of 3 radical changes in those 3 arenas: diet, exercise, stress. And this also goes to the fact that what typically people say is, or believe is, like, the incremental approach to change is better than the massive and radical approach. So, like, incremental would be tiptoeing in versus cannonballing into the pool, right? Like, we're going to take baby steps towards this versus going cold turkey. Now, that's contextual. There's some things I would not recommend doing massive radical cold turkey, like if you're addicted to heroin. Well, that's life threatening if you go cold turkey. Or even antidepressants, any kind of medications, you want to consult with a doctor, put a plan in place. Don't want to just go completely off of them, because it can scramble your brain. It can be very harmful. But in general, massive radical change is far more effective than the incremental approach. So an example of this we like to use is the 15 Twinkie tool, which it's a metaphor, but let's say I eat 15 Twinkies a day, for years. And the doctor says, hey, you need to cut these Twinkies out of your diet, or you're going to be in some trouble. So I take the incremental approach. Okay, I'm going to cut 1 Twinkie out a day for the next, couple weeks, or whatever the time frame is. So you're a day in, let's say, and you cut 1 Twinkie out. What's the psychological process that's happening? Like, what do you think is going on in my mind about 15 Twinkies versus 14 Twinkies? Do you think, am I satisfied that I've cut 1 Twinkie out, or because I'm used to that intake of sugar and that habit of 15 Twinkies a day, am I more intensely focused on the 1 Twinkie I don't get to have? Right? And my body's craving it. Now, second day, now I've eliminated 2 Twinkies. Do you think that it gets easier, or now does it become, exponentially harder because I'm now 2 Twinkies down and I only have my 13? So you can, play this out. It gets really psychologically actually very challenging the further you go. Now, let's say I cut all 15 Twinkies out on day 1 or week 1. What's the comparison, do you think, to the just cutting 1 Twinkie out? Is it the same? Is it less stressful, more stressful? Well, really, it's about the same. I'm still going through. Yes, I've been eating 15 Twinkies. Now I've cut them all out. It's pretty painful. But, 2 days to, 2 weeks in now, what's starting to happen? Well, my body is detoxing from sugar. It's now, the cravings are diminishing. And, like, what's the effect that it's having on my health? If I'm still on 14, 13 Twinkies versus no Twinkies, yeah, you're going to see some immediate benefits. You're going to start losing a ton of weight. Your body's detoxing. So you start to feel better, you get motivated. But let's say I go to a party and they're serving fried Twinkies. What's the experience like, right? I mean, it's anguish, right? Oh my God, look at those Twinkies. They look so delicious. And oh God, I've been so good. I've been following this diet. I haven't had any. I'm just going to have one, right? And what's it like when I eat that first Twinkie? It's heaven, right? It's amazing. Now, let's say I get the first one down and I start to get into the second Twinkie. What's going to start happening? Again, I've been detoxing for 2 weeks. My body's not used to this intake. It's going to start to taste like shit, right? I mean, my body's going to start rejecting it, and I might even feel full after 1.5. And so that's where, there's a very big distinction there. I'm struggling with just 13 Twinkies versus I've cut them all out. Okay, yeah, I had a lapse, right? I had two Twinkies. Now I'm driving home. I'm pissed off. God, I was doing so good. I caved in. I can't believe it. Get home, get on the scale, want to check the damage, small, medium, or large, right? I mean, 1.5, two Twinkies, really going to be virtually, nothing in terms of the effects it has. And so I'm like, okay, that's all right. I'm good. I'm getting back on it. No Twinkies. I'm doing great. So that's one example of how massive radical approach can be far more effective than the incremental approach. And it becomes more motivating, more inspiring. It creates results right off the bat. And you want to very intensely reward yourself. You want to celebrate the fact that you're eliminating this bad habit, you're sticking to a new plan, whether that's, you can consciously do that by maybe all the money that you spent on the things you were addicted to. Now you've saved up and you put a reward in place that says after 3 weeks, after 21 days, I'm going to, treat myself to a shopping spree or a vacation or whatever, right? Like really consciously reward yourself by doing the new habit. And so again, that's putting the intensity into the process. You're motivated to do it versus, oh, I got to do this. This is so hard. And I really don't want to do this. And I just want my Twinkies. And no, you have something to look forward to. You're celebrating yourself on the path forward, on celebrating and wanting that end goal and wanting that reward. And then you want to put massive pain on the flip side, massive pain on the old habit. And there's interesting ways that we can do that. Everyone's different, and this is where leverage comes in. Like, if I do this, that, what happens 5 years from now? What happens, a lot of times I'll use kids, people's children as leverage, because we're all what we call mental software programmers. We're all teaching strategies to our children, the people that look up to us. So what are you teaching? Are you teaching an unresourceful habit to your kid? How painful is that? And on the flip side, are you leading by example? Are you programming great software for your children? Are you that's the positive side of things, where, feeling great that you're setting the example, you're giving your kids great strategies as well. So there's pain and reward, from an emotional perspective that comes into the equation here that you want to use consciously. And then feels like I missed something. Did I? Oh yeah, change or die. The change or die article. So massive radical change, accountability, a support system, and then why we like to use it, because in that process he was teaming these people up with not just a support system, but coaches, be it a nutritionist, a life coach, someone that can help them, guide them along the way. It's always very powerful to have a coach in your corner, so especially from working through the psychological side of things, what's going on the thought process, really getting clear on why am I using these strategies? What can we do to establish new strategies and habits? So you want to go, not just let me just try new habits out there. I mean, there's tons of resources out there. There's tons of great things that you can do, but going deeper, getting into the thought process, the psychology that's going to drive the either breaking of the habit or the creating of the new ones is very, very important. So, that's it that's about 30 minutes. Wanted to keep at least content portion of it short. But Amanda, if you have anything that you want to look at specifically around habits, happy to do that. Or if we want to go outside of the realm of habits, we could have a good chat or talk about other things as well. So let me know. I know you're driving, but happy to have you on here or type something in. I think, let me see. Again, if you're watching this recording, feel free to send me something, send me a direct message. If you're wanting any help on habits, anything specifically. But yeah, we'll continue to do these, weekly, I think, and hope we get some more great questions. Just covered a couple of general common habits today, but would love to get into specifics with anyone who's watching, anyone who's following us. So let's see. Yeah, Amanda, just let me know if that's all good, or if you have anything. Otherwise, we'll end it here, and hope you have an awesome weekend.